Good evening, everybody. My name is Lambert Chi. I'm from the Bureau of Natural Resources in Shiprock. I'm the Supervisory Natural Resource Specialist. Um, and basically, I guess let me go over my presentation. So basically, okay, so the Navajo region is made up of 5 agencies and the Navajo partition land. So there's Eastern, Shiprock, Chinle, Western, Fort Defiance, and then there's the Navajo partition land, or the NPL. And we're all administered under the main Navajo regional office, which is in Gallup. Here's a map of our service areas. And basically it underlines everything and Newlands, but Newlands isn't part of our region yet. One of these days it will be, supposedly. And so back, shrinking down a little bit. So here's Shiprock Agency. Now, Shiprock Agency is approximately 2.7 million acres, and we're the only agency that spans 3 states. We span Utah, New Mexico, and Arizona. We basically assist the farm board representatives and grazing officials from all 20 chapters within the Shiprock Agency. Now, there's a kind of some people Northern Agency, but as far as the BIA, everything says Shiprock Agency. So they told us to use Shiprock Agency. So to me, it's Shiprock Agency. So what we do is we provide technical assistance to tribal members and the tribal government. We administer the land use and the grazing permits within the Shiprock Agency. And we provide funding opportunities for projects that preserve trust assets. The technical assistance, we provide conservation planning assistance. We provide mapping data of range units and farm plots. We provide permittee information to grazing officials and tribal departments. And this comes into play when they need clearances for projects like power lines, water lines. We kind of identify the permittees so they can get the right consents. And then we do research the origin of the respective permits, which actually is part of the transfer, or it's part of the transfer package. So we'll research the permits when during the permits or right at the permits inception in 1941. And then we report tally count information. So the grazing officials provide tally count information to us, and then we basically forward that information to the BIA central office as part of our trust responsibility. To permitting, so we do have types of land use permits. The types of land use permits are, first there's miscellaneous land use permits, which cover the dry land farms. And then we have land use permits for the river projects. And basically those are the laws that govern our administration of these land use permits. The San Juan River irrigation project spans the river here, and it includes Gariahe, Sedak, An, Shiprock, Upper Fruitland, Ninahansad, and San Juan chapters. These are the farm plots that are irrigated. And so they have 3 ditch systems on it that we administer, or we help administer: the Fruitland, the Hogback, and the Cuddy ditch systems. So the acreage breakdown per ditch system is 688.96 acres for Cuddy. Fruitland encompasses 4,498, and Hogback consists of 6,490. And the Hogback system actually includes Shiprock. So that kind of tells you how big it spans from Hogback, the rock, basically on the north side of the river, all the way to a little past Shiprock. So that actually is our biggest irrigation system in the Northern Agency, or the Shiprock Agency. For the most part, all the irrigation that goes on each ditch system is actually flood-based irrigation systems. Here you have gated pipe and then just a regular conventional flood system. So basically, this kind of underlines what I just said. So some of the irrigation systems use the gated pipe, which actually equally distributes water throughout the entire length of the field. And then the conventional flood irrigation systems, which basically you just kind of flood everything, and then you have field borders that actually kind of keep the water on the ditch. And basically, both of those are they're flood systems. Now, the issues that we encounter and other agencies encounter with this system is the irrigation system itself is outdated. So if you look at NAPI uses center pivots. We're not set up for that here. So basically the gated pipe system is probably the most technologically advanced system that you're going to get on these flood irrigated systems. So basically, and then the siphon pumps are always breaking down. And then some farmers they don't allow other farmers they basically hog all the water, and basically they don't allow water to go downstream. And then the water is inherently dirty, as you can see in this top picture here. So when that sediment filled water comes in, there's a lot of weeds and other issues. I mean, a lot of other things that get introduced onto the field, mainly weeds. We had this lady who produced a pretty good stand of alfalfa, and when this water actually washed out onto her field, she had a lot of like weeds and different range grasses like alkali saccatone that just kind of took over the field, and she didn't really get a good crop of hay this year. Now onto the range side. This is actually the 1937 map that Mr. John Collier, it actually has a signature on the corner here, and this actually shows the original grazing districts. And we haven't really changed from these districts are still pretty much intact, except for there's one that has been adjusted, but to my knowledge, but all the range, or I mean, all the district lines seem to be intact, or at least on this map. But this map was made in 1937 when the district lines were first enacted by Mr. Collier. And it was before the issuance of grazing permits. So the Shiprock agency administers a total of 2,003 grazing permits. And the first permits were issued in this agency in about 1942. So unlike other agencies, or unlike other tribes, because I came from Hickory. I was working for the BIA in Hickory, and they used what they call animal unit months, or AUMs. And this is the only reservation that uses sheep units. So all our permits here on Navajo wide are calculated in sheep units. And for reference, it takes 4 sheep units to 1 cow, or 1 AUM, or 1.25 horses. Here's some of the conditions of some of the range, but this is before the rain. And if you can see this weak stand of western wheatgrass on the Chusca Mountains, and you can kind of see the grasses on this RMU. So the outside, on the right side is basically outside the RMU, and on the left side is the inside of the RMU. They don't really have this RMU fully stocked. You can kind of see where the landscape does need grazing, because you can kind of see the denuded grass. There's quite a bit of grass here within the RMU, but outside not so much. But you can kind of see the grass is kind of becoming decadent because it's graying right there. And that's just kind of one of the issues we deal with here in Northern Agency. Some of the issues that we do encounter on the grazing permits, and somewhat on the land use permits, is some of the permits have multiple names. So basically what they did was they took a larger number, like let's say 50, and then they basically divided it between 5 people. And so they kind of fractionated that permit. So they're as time goes on, they're getting smaller. And then some of the permits have a trust status where only one person is head of the trust, and it's kind of a complicated issue, especially once it goes into probate. And then some of the farm plots in the range areas have become urbanized. And urbanization is actually one of the issues we have to deal with, because basically it's taking out some of the better range lands and you're putting houses on it and taking it out of production forever. And some of the farm plots have undergone that change also. There's idle farm plots. There's absentee permittees, where we have permittees from, let's say, Denver, that aren't really using it until, for some reason they just kind of parked it. And so we kind of have issues with that. And then some of the LUPs and grazing permits are in need of probate. And then, of course, nationwide, we have a problem with feral horses. Now here we do, like I stated before, we do have bigger projects that we're doing. So right now, in the Shiprock agency, we have the 13 weed inventory, which has just completed. And here's a map showing basically what the contractor inventoried, all those little tributaries leading into the Chaco River, to the Chaco Wash. And what they did was, so basically they did an inventory, so they have to do an inventory this year. We're actually starting up on a cultural resource survey and a biological survey for that same area. When those are packaged together, we can do what they call an environmental assessment, and then we can identify areas to treat. Unfortunately, we're the government, so a lot of the weed treatments, the actual work that goes on the ground to eradicate some of these weeds, it takes a pretty good amount of time to do them. So basically what we had to start off with was we had to start off with an inventory. Then we have to get a cultural resource and biological survey done. And then we can finally identify areas that we actually can treat. So right now, District 13 is probably the furthest along. We have the District 12 inventory, which is actually, we have two parts of that. And that's just the inventory. And here's the District 13 biological and cultural resource survey. We also have the McCracken Mesa rangeland inventory. So every so often, or every few years, ideally, we have to do a range inventory, hire a contractor to do range inventory on a given area. So this year we're doing the McCracken Mesa range inventory. And here are pictures of those current projects. So basically this is part of our cultural resource survey. So this kind of shows an old hogan on the Chakawash region. And then here's the contractors actually in McCracken Mesa doing rangeland clipping. So basically what they do is they give us the data and then we make this management decisions based on the data. But basically right now, the contractors are only, well, they barely got started on District 13 cultural resource survey. And then most of the field work's done for the McCracken Mesa project, but they'll analyze the data and they'll give us a pounds per acre that's found within the McCracken Mesa region. Other departments we have.
Lambert, this is Marge. I have a question before I forget.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question on the picture to your right. They're doing the clipping on the forge, right?
Right.
And they're doing the assessment. So every year our moisture is different. So certain years there's low forage. So based on what they're doing here, is there gonna be an amendment or an adjustment of animal carrying capacity for each range unit one of these days? Or is it gonna stay the same the way it was from years ago?
That's a very good question. And unfortunately, I don't have an answer for that. Specifically for the McCracken Mesa project. So they were never issued permits since they added it to the reservation in, I think, 1953 or something like that. So they added it. It's one of the later pieces they added to the reservation. So we've never issued permits for that area. So what has to happen is, like in PL, we have to get this study done and it gets packaged together to propose an environmental impact statement for it. Then we can make those, once everything's analyzed, we can make those decisions on how many we can actually, what our numbers are going to be at for assigning permits up there. It's one of the steps we have to go through. So to answer your question, this will not, I guess everybody has animals up there, so I guess it will adjust in that regard, but they don't have permits. We don't have to adjust. There's no permits to adjust, basically. This is kind of starting new out of the box, but we'll see.
Thank you.
Okay, some other programs we have are BIA fire. So you wouldn't think there's actually a lot of fire activity in Shiprock, but there is, because 75% of all the fire calls come from uncontrolled field burnings. So, and here's a fire that happened just last year. This one actually jumped across into Gadiay. Gadiay is on the other side of the river. This is on the north side of the San Juan River on the Shiprock side. And it actually jumped across the river and actually burned a pretty good area. Then other things we do, we have BIA engineering, which they did assist on some things like lining these ditches. So they were earthen ditches before. And so some of these ditches have been lined, and the BIA has provided funding for some of these projects. And some of them are actually in conjunction with the NRCS, like the Gutty Eye project was done with the NRCS, and there's the BOR, the Bureau of Reclamation, that provides some funding for some of this stuff too, which, you know, we kind of all pool our resources together and get, you know, do that. And I guess I'm at the end. Any questions? Pretty short.
If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself, or you can go ahead and insert your question in the chat box.
I have another question.
Go ahead.
So your 10-year, or is it 10-year or 5-year lease renewal is coming up for Shiprock too? The same
We
as
don't-
Conway?
We don't have that. We're all trust land.
Oh,
So basically, on this side of the reservation, unlike Eastern, we don't have grazing leases. We have grazing permits. The grazing permits don't expire until the people expire or they transfer them to another individual.
wow.
Those are the only times they expire, and they haven't been adjusted since they've been enacted in 1941. And yeah,
Okay. Another question. What is what is the fee per animal unit? I think you're saying you're going by the sheep unit. Let's
We-
say.
we do
for
not
the-
have a fee on the reservation.
Oh, nobody's paying for their grazing fee?
Yeah, but the caveat is in Eastern, you can have way more animals than you can on the res. Our biggest permit in Shiprock agency is 222. And
Sheep.
222 sheep units divided by 4. And so that is the maximum number that anybody can have in Shiprock agency, because unless they our limit is 350 to begin with. So at 350, they're limited. No, that's not right. Let's see. Like 72 cows or something like that, 72 head
Mm-hmm.
or 87 head. I'm sorry. That's the biggest permit you can actually have here. And nobody has that. A lot of our permits are, a lot of them are at 10 sheep units. So the minimum you can have is actually 10. The maximum is 350. And a majority of them are pretty small. And so, you know, it brings up a whole bunch of questions that I don't know, that, you know, I'm almost afraid to ask.
Wow.
But in Eastern, you can have way more animals. And in
Yeah.
Eastern, it's more in line with what Hickory used to do. Like in Hickory, there was nothing smaller than 125 head range assignments. But there was only, across the entire Hickory reservation, there's only 110 range units total. We have 2003 permits in the Shiprock agency. That's the total number of grazing permits, just raw number. It's 2003. So every area is covered by a grazing, or most every area is covered by a grazing fee, except for the places that have been withdrawn. There's some places that have been withdrawn from grazing, like the San Juan River Irrigation Project has been withdrawn from grazing. The coal mines, they have been withdrawn from grazing. But a lot of, and Nappy has been withdrawn from grazing. But a lot of them, you know, are covered by, even I have grazing permits in downtown Shiprock.
Interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Marge. Lambert, you have a question in the chat box.
No, they're not done by our, they're not done in-house. We usually contract biological and culture resource surveys out. We also, the inventories that we do, we did contract that out also. Most of our projects are contracted out.
I hope that answered your question, Raquel. Are there any more questions?
I have a
Yes,
question
I
for
have a
you.
question.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Actually, I have like a number of them, but I was curious to about when these permits were given or established by the BIA. How were those animal units determined? And then is the BIA doing anything to curtail the urbanization of prime grazing lands? And then there was one other question. I think that question is, there are a number of permits with actually no livestock, and it's just a paper permit. Does the BIA have an idea on the number of those, and what does that look like?
Well, to answer your first question, so the grazing districts were actually established in 1937, if you look at this map. And if you zoom way in or zoom pretty far in, you'll actually see the grazing capacities. So when the BIA first started these studies back in 37, there's some shoot units associated with each individual district here that you see. And in Shiprock agency, the first grazing permits were issued in 1942. They range around, well, they were after 37, so they decided to established a grazing permitted system in 1937, and then after that, we started issuing them. So in Shiprock agency, the year is 1942. A majority of ours date back to 1942. And I'm not sure what your next question was. Oh, the urbanization, how do we track that? There's really no good way of doing that. So, I mean, we're just kind of getting, I think part of it is we do need to get back to the table with, I mean, this is personal opinion, not BIA employee Lambert talking. We should get back together and actually start planning for this stuff for the future, because we are degrading a lot of rangeland. And, you know, everybody wants to put their house on the nicest spot for some odd reason. And I mean, I don't know how to stop that. And I think it's going to take a bigger tribal effort to do so. And I forget what your next question was.
The third one was kind of associated with the urbanization.
Oh, yeah, you were asking about the absentee permittees.
I mean, there's paper. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say there are permit holders who no longer hold livestock, but they have the permit, and it appears that these permit holders with no livestock are the ones signing off on home site leases in these really nice grazing areas, you know, and that's what I'm seeing. And so that was the question with the permit holders that have no livestock, no longer have any livestock. So that was associated with the other question, the second one.
Yeah, and one of the hiccups that we encounter is all of our enforcement's handled actually by the Navajo Nation. They, back in the 70s, we 638'd the tribal rangers, and the nation decided to undertake that responsibility. So I know they have a lot on their plate, and since the Rangers' inception, they've added functions onto their job duties, I guess. Because before, I guess they were just basically cattle inspectors, and they were people that were actually enforce the stuff with livestock. And now you have them doing other things. They call them resource enforcement officers now. They check for wood hauling permits. They do a bunch of other things in addition to what they do. So yeah, there is absentee permittees, and I think, I don't know. I mean, I don't have a good answer for you.
Okay, thank you. Jesse?
Yes, my question is, if permit holders want any type of assistance from the BIA program, where do they go to sign up and inquire about the assistance you guys provide?
Oh, actually, that was my last slide. Ah, darn it. Let's see, hold on. Oh, okay. So there's each of our contact information. And I took the liberty of adding all 5 agencies.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, and if you look at to the side, there's a hogan there. And if you notice, our ancestors didn't live in the most pristine rangeland. Just pointing it out.
Right.
Yeah, this is one of those pre-Fort Sumner hogans, and it was kind of hidden. But yeah, they didn't pick the most awesome piece of rangeland to live on.
Right, nice, thank you.
That's an interesting picture. Yeah. Another question, in one of your slide, you indicated, there's a number of permittees, and then, you do, report tally count. Is there a place on each agency's website, have that data for the public? Not the name, but at least how many cows are in Vicente, how many cows are in other chapters, overall, how many cows in the Eastern Agency?
You know what? That's actually a real good question, and I'll ask, because every year, so we collect the tally count information, and what we do is we fill out a report called a GIPRA report. And I forget what GIPRA is for; it's an acronym, but basically send that to central office. But it has a breakdown of each individual agency. I mean that should be actually available for anybody to look at. But I'll ask. I mean, I'll ask the lady who actually collects that stuff out of the region, because that's actually a good question. Thank you.
Yeah, that is, well, working with the chapter, chapter do a lot of planning for their community. And that would be a very good source of data to plan for, individual livestock, like if there's a need of, feed, and then they'll plan based on that number. So right now, it just appears that we have to kind of rely on land board, but sometimes, it's very difficult to get information. So other than that, the chapters end up doing another cycle of assessment again for each permittee, like how many, they do a tally count again. For, no, administration would do that, just to get that information, while there should have been already an information posted someplace that we could all share. Yeah, so I that would be a very good information for chapter administration, like for us doing planning for our community. Thank you, Lambert. That was good presentation.
It seemed a little too quick for me, but okay.
Thank you, Marge. Thanks, Lambert. You have 2 questions
Okay.
from Raquel. I'm not sure if you see them right there. The second question is just right below. Is there still a hold on issuing new grazing permits with a new name after probate?
Okay, this is actually the $10 million question. Since 2014, the Navajo Nation Game and Fish has put a hold on reissuance of any grazing permit, whether it be transfer or probate. So we're kind of stuck behind that, because they are not issuing us a BRCF to do grazing permits. But my question is, since I came from Jicarilla, I've tried to look for the statute that says we need one. but I haven't found it yet. And I'm not sure why they're requiring that. And I'm not sure, I've had council delegates ask me what authority are they using, but it seems like none of us really want to jump. But anyway, that's just kind of FYI. Now, do grazing permits still include? It depends. So like I said, it really does depend on the case spec. Ideally, we want one name on it, but I know that we have court orders saying that there should be two names on it or whatever names on it. And those are things that we haven't really had to, they haven't come to a head because we haven't issued any grazing permits since 2014. So ideally, they should only have one. It depends on how big it is though. Because if it's anything over 50 sheep units, I've heard that there can be two names on it, but I'm not sure because we haven't started issuing.
Okay, well, are there any more questions? I'll go ahead and give everybody a minute. Okay, well, if not, Lambert, do you want to head over to that directory that you had on there?
Okay.
So if anybody is interested in technical assistance, right? Is that
Right.
Okay. As far as technical assistance, here are the numbers to each of the agency. Take a screenshot or take a picture of it and stash it away in your contact information. So that concludes the BIA presentation. So I just want to say thank you, Lambert, for providing us this information, and we really appreciate it. It is short, but the presentation slides that Lambert did forward me, they'll be up on the website. And if you want get a copy from there, you can, or you can go ahead and email me and I can give you a copy. So I released the polls, well, Jesse released the polls, thank you. If you guys please take the time, just a minute to fill out the polls, I would really appreciate it. But we'll go ahead and continue on with our announcements. I'll go ahead and hop on over to our next week workshop. So what we have on here is the conservation planning online workshop that will be on December 15th, which is on a Thursday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. If you guys haven't attended our previous in-person conservation planning, this is just as this, same topics similar topics to what we have discussed during our in-person, from creating goals and objectives, soil web surveying, which we're going to do. So before you attend the workshop, please get a sample of 1 cup of soil. We're going to be doing a soil surveying demonstration. This will be also presented by the Dene College Land Grant Office and interns. So they're going to be doing the presentation. We're going to be talking about livestock and rangeland management strategies for resource concerns. So if you guys want to come on and join us, please do. It's going to be from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. It will be recorded just like how all of our webinars are. So you have the option to go back to whichever topic that you want to kind of get a little bit more understanding. It's all going to be recorded. But that's our workshop for next week. And thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar. We'll be posting up for upcoming events on our Facebook page. This will be on our YouTube channel. And we do have a monthly newsletter that comes with our updated programs and what other project partners have to offer in their events and so forth. If you guys have any questions or requests for PowerPoints, email me or Jesse, and our website's up there. So if you guys want to look at that, there are other upcoming events. So if you guys want to take a look at it, feel free. Navajo Sustainable Agriculture Project is a New Mexico Cooperative Extension Service initiative delivered in collaboration with Dene College Land Grant Office and COPE, which stands for Community Outreach and Patient Empowerment. Our project is funded by the USDA Outreach for outreach and assistance for socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers and veteran farmers and ranchers program. So the goals of the NSA project are to improve the operations, profitability, and sustainability of our Navajo ranchers and farmers and veteran farmers and ranchers. We are increasing our Navajo producers' knowledge and access available programs and technical assistance provided by USDA programs, which is NRCS, FSA, RD, RMA, and other programs that are alike. Increase the local production and consumption of fresh fruits and vegetables and healthy foods by Navajo families and individuals through our gardening programs. So the way we accomplish these goals for the NSA project is committed in providing our producers with agriculture workshops, such as our weekly Zoom webinars that are recorded and posted on our Facebook page and YouTube channel, our monthly newsletters that consist of all the previous webinars that we have hosted, some USDA, FSA, NRCS programs and what they have to offer, and many more within our newsletters, our annual agriculture resource fairs, our field day and demonstrations, individual technical assistance with production, management, completing BIA and other natural resource conservation plans, and farm and ranch plans. So you can view all of this information on our website at nsa.nmsu.edu for any upcoming events or other information from conservation planning to directory for tribal agriculture. So yeah.